I am Isaiah Thornton, 72 years old, and I am standing in the dark. The valet stand is empty. The heavy oak doors of Veyrier, one of the most celebrated restaurants in Los Angeles, are locked tight. A single small sign taped to the glass reads, "Closed for private event." But there are no cars, no music, no life. I checked my watch, the simple Timex I've worn for 20 years. 7:00 p.m., Saturday. This was the time. This was the place. My son Andre had been very specific in the text message he sent me last week. "Dad, the wedding dinner is at 7 Saturday Le Veyrier. Please don't be late." I pulled out my phone, my fingers feeling stiff in the cool night air. I dialed his number. It rang once, twice, then picked up. The sound on his end wasn't the quiet dinner I expected. It was loud, music, laughter, glasses clinking. "Dad," Andre's voice was breathless. "Hey, is everything okay? I can't really talk, we're busy." "Son," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I'm at the restaurant, Le Veyrier, but it's locked, it's dark. I think you gave me the wrong address for the wedding." The line went silent for a 3-second beat that felt like an hour. I heard a muffled sound, him covering the phone. I heard the sharp, unmistakable voice of my daughter-in-law, Brooke. "Oh my God," she hissed, her voice cutting through the background noise. "He actually went. Just tell him, get it over with." Andre came back on the line. His voice was different, strained, guilty. "Dad, oh man, this is so awkward." He laughed, a short, nervous bark. "The wedding, right, the wedding was... Dad, the wedding was yesterday." Yesterday. The word didn't compute. "Yesterday?" I asked. "But the text, you said Saturday." "Yeah, I know," he said, talking fast now. "It must have been a typo, an autocorrect. Brooke handled all the invites, you know how crazy it gets. It was yesterday, at the Bel Air Country Club. It was beautiful, Dad, you would have... Well, look, I'm so sorry, I feel terrible, but we're literally walking to the gate at LAX right now. We're heading to Bora Bora. We'll do a dinner or something when we get back. Okay, I gotta go." Before I could say a word, he hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, the call log staring back at me. Call ended. A typo. An autocorrect. He lied to me. They lied. They gave me the wrong date, the wrong location to keep me, their simple old father, away from their new wealthy friends. They didn't want me there. I looked down at myself. I was wearing my best suit. A custom Brioni dark charcoal, the kind that costs more than a car. The suit I'd saved for this day. In my inner breast pocket, I felt the familiar shape of the gift I'd prepared. I reached inside. I pulled out the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. I looked at the name, for Andre and Brooke Thornton. I looked at the amount, $2 million and 00100. My entire body went cold, not from the night air, but from a deep, sudden clarity. I held that check, the key to their future, the end of all their financial worries. Then, very slowly, very deliberately, I tore it in half. The sound was sharp, final. I tore it again and again. I walked over to a public trash can on the curb and let the small, confetti-sized pieces of paper flutter from my hand into the darkness. "A typo," I whispered to the empty street. "Okay. Before I tell you what happened when they landed from their honeymoon and discovered that the confused old man they had discarded was the only thing standing between them and financial ruin, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, and please hit that like button and subscribe if you believe that underestimating your elders is the last mistake you should ever make." Growing up in Los Angeles meant something different to Andre than it did to me. To him, I was just Isaiah Thornton, the retired postal worker. I was the man who woke up at 5 a.m. for 42 years to sort and deliver mail. He saw our house in View Park, Windsor Hills, not as a cherished piece of history in one of the most prominent, affluent black neighborhoods in the country, but as old and small compared to the glass and steel boxes his new friends lived in. He saw my car, a 1998 Lincoln Continental, not as a mint-condition classic I meticulously maintained, but as a sign that I was poor, that I was stuck. He never knew the truth. My beloved wife, Lucille, God rest her soul, and I made a promise to each other when we first made it. We came from the dirt poor side of Houston. We knew what it was to have nothing. And when we built something, we swore we would never let it poison us. We would never let it make our son weak. Zay. She used to tell me, her hand on my arm. Let's raise Andre to be a man, not an heir. Let him find his own strength. Let him respect the work, not the wallet. So we did. I never told him. My postal job was real. I loved the routine. I loved the people. It kept me grounded. But it wasn't my only job. My real job, my life's work, was Griffin Thornton Logistics. My best friend, my brother Jules Griffin, and I started it in the back of a rented garage in 1983. He was the numbers guy. I was the operations guy. We started with one battered flatbed truck and a promise to be faster and smarter than everyone else. Today, GT Logistics is a silent giant. We handle high-tech warehousing and specialized transport for aerospace and defense contractors. We are worth nearly $500 million, and I am the 50% silent partner. The chairman. I lived on my postal pension. It was enough. The rest, the real money, the dividends, the profits, the stock options, all of it went into a portfolio managed by Jules. It grew. Silently. A dragon sleeping on a mountain of gold. I kept waiting for the right moment to tell Andre. I thought I would when he graduated college. Then I thought, no, let him get a job first. Let him learn the value of $1. Then I thought, no, let him get married. Let him show me what kind of man he's become. I wanted to see his character. I wanted to see Lucille's legacy in him. But then, 2 years ago, he brought Brooke home. She walked into my home, the home where Andre took his first steps, the home Lucille passed away in, and I watched her face. It was a mask of polite disgust. Brooke Davenport was a tall, rail-thin woman who looked like she'd been assembled by a committee of luxury brands. Her dress was simple, but I recognized the cut. Loro Piana. Her bag was a Celine. Her shoes were Manolos. She was broadcasting wealth, or at least the desire for it. Mr. Thornton, she said. Her handshake was a brief, cold touch of fingertips. Andre has told me so much about you. Please call me Isaiah, I said, offering her a smile. Oh. She paused as if considering it. I think Isaiah is fine. What a truly cozy home you have. Cozy. There it was. The word people use when they mean cramped and old-fashioned. I watched her eyes flick over the sofa Lucille and I had reupholstered ourselves. I saw her gaze linger on the framed photos of a young Andre in a homemade Halloween costume. I could almost hear her internal monologue, dated, cheap, needs renovating. It served us well, I said simply. Please sit. I'm making Lucille's favorite short ribs. Oh, how rustic, she said. I'm afraid I don't really eat red meat. Or much of anything heavy. Do you just have a salad? Maybe some sparkling water Perrier if you have it? I looked at Andre. He just shrugged, already under her spell. She's a healthy eater, Dad. I went to the kitchen and made her a salad. I only had tap water. When I gave it to her, she looked at the glass with a small, tight frown before taking a tiny sip. When I returned, she was already interrogating me. So, Isaiah, Andre tells me you were a postman your entire career. I nodded. 42 years, never missed a day. Good, honest work. She smiled, a tight, thin-lipped expression that didn't reach her eyes. How admirable. I have so much respect for the working class. My father, she said, naming a man I'd never heard of, runs a private equity fund. He finds it fascinating how people can manage on a fixed income. It's a real skill, isn't it? Budgeting, couponing, that sort of thing. The insults were so perfectly wrapped in superficial compliments that my son, my poor, blinded son, was beaming. He thought she was impressed. I, on the other hand, felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I'd spent 3 decades negotiating with the sharpest, most ruthless CEOs in the defense industry. I know a power play when I see one. This wasn't a conversation. It was an appraisal. She was sizing up my value, and she had concluded I had none. I analyzed her. She wasn't just rude. She was calculating. She was disappointed. She had hoped her new boyfriend's father had more to offer. She was assessing me as a future liability. When Andre got up to take a very important call in the backyard, a habit he'd picked up from her always needing to seem busy, Brooke's demeanor shifted. The fake smile vanished. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Isaiah, Andre and I are very serious. We're planning a future together, a significant future. I'm happy for him, I said. Yes, she said, brushing a non-existent piece of lint from her dress. But you see, my family, we're used to a certain standard. We'll be merging two families after all. And it's vital that everyone is on the same page. And what page is that, Brooke? She looked at me, her eyes flat and cold. The page where we aren't held back. We just want to make sure you'll be comfortable in your retirement, that you won't be a financial concern. It wasn't a question, it was a threat. She was asking me in the politest way possible. How much of a burden are you going to be on my new husband? Before I could respond, Andre slid the patio door open, his call finished. Brooke's bright, dazzling smile snapped back into place. Oh, honey, your dad and I were just getting to know each other. I sat back smiling, playing the part of the simple, harmless old father. But I knew right then that this woman was not just marrying my son. She was planning a hostile takeover, and she saw me as a bad asset, a liability to be managed, minimized, and eventually discarded. I didn't say a word. I just observed. I watched her over the next 2 years. I watched her change my son. I watched my son start to shrink. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow erosion like water wearing down stone. Andre, the boy who used to laugh so loudly his whole body shook. The boy who proudly helped me tune up the Lincoln on Saturdays started to apologize. He apologized for everything. He apologized for the neighborhood. Dad, this area it's fine, he said one afternoon, staring out the window of my View Park home. But it's just static. You know, Brooke is used to places with more energy. Energy. That was her word for it. He meant whiter. He meant richer. He was ashamed of View Park. He was ashamed of me. He stopped talking about his job. For years, he'd been proud to be a regional manager at a shipping company. It was a good, solid job he had earned all by himself, a job that paid him well over 6 figures. But after a few months with Brooke, it became just mid-level logistics. He traded his comfortable jeans for tight-fitting slacks that didn't suit him. He started using words I'd never heard come from his mouth. Dad, Brooke's family. They just operate on a different level. He tried to explain once. It's not about the money, it's about expectations, a certain standard. I knew exactly what it was about. It was always about the money. I just nodded. I played my part, the simple retired postman who didn't understand the world of high finance. Whatever makes you happy, son. But he wasn't happy. I could see it. He was stressed. He was swimming in an ocean he wasn't built for, trying to keep up with a woman who was living a life funded by debt, and he was using his own soul as collateral. The real moment of truth, the one that made me realize this, was more than just a bad match happened about 6 months before they announced their engagement. They had come over for dinner. I'd spent all day making Lucille's chicken and dumplings, Andre's childhood favorite. Brooke naturally didn't touch it. Oh, Isaiah, she sighed, pushing a dumpling around her plate with a fork. So many carbohydrates. I'm just trying to be careful. She spent the entire meal scrolling through her phone, sighing loudly and showing Andre pictures of platinum rings I couldn't even see from my end of the table. After dinner, Andre helped me clear the plates. Brooke stayed at the table, tapping her long, pale fingers on the wood. Isaiah, she said, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. Do you have any real family heirlooms? You know, besides the furniture. I stopped walking to the kitchen. What do you mean, real, Brooke? She means like assets, Dad. Andre mumbled, not looking at me. He was already speaking her language. You know, stocks, bonds, property, things that are passed down. Brooke finally looked up at me, her smile bright and brittle. My family, the Davenports. We have a lineage. We have things to pass down. A summer home in the Hamptons, my mother's side. My father's art collection. We're just trying to figure out what your side brings to the merger. A merger. That's what she called marriage. I kept my voice calm. Lucille and I, we brought hard work and a good name. That's what we're passing down. Brooke's smile faltered. Right. Hard work. That's sweet. Later that night I was in the kitchen, my hands in the sink full of soapy water. I thought they were in the living room, but they were in the hallway just outside the kitchen door. They thought I couldn't hear them. They were whispering, viciously. "I cannot believe this, Andre." It was Brooke. Her voice was no longer sweet or polite. It was low and sharp as a razor. "This is it. A postman's pension. This tiny, crumbling house that smells like old food. This is your contribution." "Brooke, lower your voice," Andre pleaded. "He'll hear you." "I don't care if he hears me," she spat. "He needs to know my parents are wiring us $50,000 just for the deposit on the Bel-Air Country Club. $50,000. And what is he contributing? A recipe for dumplings. It's just... He's simple. Okay, he worked hard his whole life. This is all he has." "Stop saying hard work," she snapped. "The man who cleans my father's pool works hard. That doesn't mean I want him at the wedding reception. Andre, you promised me your family was comfortable. You promised me he had savings. This is not comfortable. This is a liability." There was a heavy silence. I stood perfectly still, my hands pruning in the water. "What do you want me to do, Brooke?" Andre finally said. His voice was broken, defeated. "You need to handle it," she said, her voice turning cold and pragmatic. "You need to find out exactly what he has. People like him, these old-timers, they sometimes have cash saved up or bonds, or maybe the house is paid off. We could leverage it. We need something from him, Andre. Otherwise, this merger is completely unbalanced. My parents are investing in you. They expect a return." I held my breath. I listened to my son stay silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend his mother's memory. He didn't tell this woman to get out of our house. He just said, Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll see what I can do." They left a few minutes later, all smiles again. "Thank you for the dinner, Isaiah, so rustic." I closed the door behind them. I washed and dried the last dish. I sat down in my quiet house in the chair Lucille always loved, and I knew my son was lost. I knew that Brooke was not just a gold digger. She was an exterminator, and I was the pest she wanted gone. It was 3 months before the wedding, and Andre showed up at my door alone. This was a red flag. Ever since Brooke had sunk her claws into him, she was always there, attached to his arm, a silent, smiling warden. But he came alone on a Tuesday night. He looked thin. The expensive suit he wore, a size too small, looked cheap on him, wrinkled at the elbows. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. "Hey, Dad, you busy?" "Never too busy for you, son. Come in." He walked into the living room but didn't sit. He paced. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit I hadn't seen since he was in high school. "You look tired, Andre. Want some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." No coffee, thanks," he said, his voice tight. I just need to talk to you for a minute, man to man." I leaned against the door frame, my arms crossed, and waited. I knew this wasn't a social visit. This was a transaction. "Dad," he started, staring at the floor. Look, I know I haven't been around much. This wedding planning, it's a monster. Brooke's family, they do things on a whole different scale." "So I've heard," I said. "Yeah, and, well, we've hit a snag." He finally looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot. "It's just a temporary thing, a cash flow issue, you know." Cash flow, her word. I didn't know that word. I knew broke and I knew rich. Cash flow was the word people used when they were pretending to be rich but were actually broke. "The venue," he said, waving his hand vaguely. "The Bel-Air Country Club. It's incredible, Dad. But they need the final deposit by Friday. And Brooke's parents. They're covering everything, of course. They've been amazing. They're footing the bill for almost the entire wedding." "That's generous of them," I said, my voice flat. "So generous," he said, relief flooding his face as if he'd passed the first test. "The thing is, Dad, their money. It's tied up. It's in one of Franklin's private funds, an international account. It takes 30 days to liquidate without a massive penalty. You know how it is with those big trust funds." Isaiah Thornton, chairman of a $500 million logistics empire, nodded slowly. "No, son. I don't know how it is. Tell me." He flushed a dark red crawling up his neck. It's complicated. Okay. The point is the deposit is due Friday, and we're short. Just just for a few weeks. He stopped pacing. He stood in the middle of my living room, a 38-year-old man looking like a terrified 12-year-old. Dad, I need to borrow $50,000. $50,000. He said it like he was asking for 500. The silence in the room stretched out. I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the clock Lucille and I had bought at a flea market in Pasadena. I know, he said, rushing to fill the silence. I know it's a huge amount, and I hate asking. God, I hate this. But it's not even a real loan, Dad. It's just a bridge. Franklin, Brooke's father, he is going to wire me the money the second his fund clears. First of the month. You'll have it right back plus interest if you want. I swear on Mom's memory. He should not have done that. He should never have brought Lucille's name into this den of lies. My first instinct, the businessman in me, was to laugh. It was the oldest, stalest scam in the book. The money's tied up. I knew from Jules's preliminary checks that Franklin Davenport didn't have a private fund. He had a foreclosed property in Arizona and 3 maxed-out credit cards. The father in me, however, felt a different kind of coldness. I saw my son. I saw the desperation in his eyes. It was real. But it wasn't the desperation of a man planning a wedding. It was the desperation of a man terrified of the woman he was engaged to. He was terrified of failing her. He was terrified of what she would say if he came back empty-handed. This was my crossroads. If I said no, if I called his bluff, I would confirm all of Brooke's accusations. That I was just a broke, useless old man. That I was a liability. It would push Andre further away, right into her arms. He would resent me for embarrassing him for not stepping up. But if I said yes, I was financing my own execution. I was rewarding the lie. I was funding the very woman who was systematically poisoning my son against me. I was paying for the rope she would use to hang me. I looked at him, really looked at him. The sweat on his brow, the slight tremor in his hands. He wasn't asking for money to start a life. He was asking for money to keep his manipulator happy. And just like that, I knew what I had to do. To see how deep the rot truly went, you have to give it room to grow. Okay, I said. Andre blinked as if he'd misheard. Okay, just like that. I'll write you a check, I said. I walked to the old wooden desk where I still kept my postman checkbook, the one from the local credit union. I pulled it out and wrote the check, $50,000 and 00100. I tore it slowly from the book and handed it to him. His hands shook as he took the paper. He stared at it. Dad, thank you. Thank you. You won't regret this. I'll pay you back. Franklin will pay you back. I swear. I'm sure he will, I said. He hugged me then, a fast, awkward, guilty hug. The hug of a thief who just got away with the loot. You're a lifesaver, Dad. Brooke is going to be so relieved. I gotta go. I gotta go tell her. Go on, son. He practically ran out the door. I heard his car start and speed away, tires squealing just a little. I stood there for a long time listening to the silence of the house. I walked back to the fireplace and picked up the photograph of Lucille, the one from our 25th anniversary. Her smile was so bright, so honest. Oh, Lucille, I whispered to the empty room. What have I done? I had just paid my son to betray me. I hope I'm doing the right thing, my love. I truly hope I am. Because right now, it feels like I just loaded the gun they planned to use on me. But it was the only way. It was the only way to see the end of this. I had just bought $50,000 worth of fertilizer, and now I was going to sit back and watch exactly what kind of poison would grow. The 3 months that followed were quiet, too quiet. Andre and I exchanged a few brief, awkward text messages. He confirmed the wedding date and time. Saturday, 7 p.m. Veyrier. I asked if they needed any more help with the deposits. He replied almost instantly. No, Dad. We're all set. Franklin's fund finally cleared. Everything is perfect. We can't wait to see you. We can't wait to see you. The lie was so easy for him now. I spent those 3 months in a state of cold observation. I went to my real office at the Griffin Thornton Tower twice a week, meeting with Jules, signing off on acquisitions in Singapore and shipping routes in the North Atlantic. The rest of the time I was Isaiah, the retired postman, working in my yard reading my books. I let the silence build. I gave them all the rope they needed. When Saturday finally arrived, the day of the supposed wedding, I woke up before the sun. I felt a strange calm. Today was the day of the test. Today I would find out once and for all what was left of my son. I spent the morning in my workshop polishing the chrome on my Lincoln until it shone like a mirror. This wasn't just a car, it was a statement. Lucille had loved this car. "It has substance, Zay," she'd said. "Not like those flimsy new things." It was the car I'd drive to my son's wedding. At 4 p.m. I began to prepare. I didn't go to the simple closet where I kept my postman's work shirts and my comfortable slacks. I went to the back of my bedroom to the custom-built cedar-lined wardrobe that Andre had never once looked inside. I took out the suit. Andre and Brooke expected me to show up in a 20-year-old polyester suit from Sears, the one I used to wear to church on Easter. They expected me to look like their liability. Instead, I pulled out the Brioni. It was a dark, charcoal gray, almost black, cut from a wool so fine it felt like silk. I'd had it made in Milan on a business trip 5 years ago. It was the suit of Isaiah Thornton, the chairman. I put it on. The jacket settled on my shoulders with a familiar, comforting weight. I chose a simple silver silk tie and my Patek Philippe Calatrava. It was Lucille's last gift to me. For the man who has everything. The engraving on the back read, "Except more time." I looked at myself in the mirror. The 72-year-old postman was gone. In his place was a man they had never met, a man they had gravely underestimated. At 5 p.m., I drove the Lincoln not to the wedding, but to a quiet, discreet granite building in Century City. It didn't have a large sign. It just had a small brass plaque, Harrison Private Bank. I didn't use the credit union for my real life. I walked inside. The lobby was silent, all marble and rich mahogany. A young woman at the desk looked up, saw me, and immediately smiled. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thornton. Mr. Harrison is expecting you." Jules had called ahead. I was shown into a private office. Mr. Harrison, a man my age with sharp eyes and an impeccable suit of his own, stood up to shake my hand. "Zay," he said, "good to see you. A big day." "Let's hope so, Robert," I said. "You have the item." He didn't speak. He simply opened a dark wooden box on his desk and slid a single piece of paper across to me. It wasn't a personal check from my postman account. It was a cashier's check drawn from one of the corporate holding accounts. $2 million, Harrison said quietly, stating the fact. "It's a substantial wedding gift." "It's not a gift, Robert," I said, picking up the check. I felt the weight of it in my hand. "It's a foundation. It's a stake. It's my son's independence." My plan was simple. I'd seen Andre shrink. I'd seen Brooke and her family with their invisible funds and supposed lineage make him feel small. This check was his equalizer. This check would buy him his manhood back. It was enough money to free him from whatever financial hold they had on him. Enough for him to stand up and be his own man, not just Brooke's husband. I wanted to see the look on Brooke's face. I wanted to see the look on her arrogant father's face when the broke postman single-handedly funded their entire future. I wanted to see my son realize that everything he was chasing his wife had been insulting. "I hope he appreciates it, Zay," Harrison said, his voice soft. "So do I, Robert," I replied, sliding the check into the inner pocket of my Brioni suit. "So do I." I walked out of the bank and got back into the Lincoln. I sat there for a minute, my hands on the wheel. This was it. The final test. My son had lied to me about $50,000. He was marrying a woman who saw me as human garbage. He was on a dark path. But maybe, just maybe, this gesture could pull him back. Maybe seeing this, seeing what I was willing to do for him, would remind him who he was. It would remind him of Lucille. My hope was a small flickering flame, but it was still there. I put the car in drive and headed for Veyrier. I drove toward my son's wedding, holding on to that $2 million hope, ready to save him. I had no idea I was driving to my own execution. I had no idea that when I arrived the restaurant would be dark and the betrayal would be absolute. I stood on the dark sidewalk, the phone pressed hard against my ear. It rang. Once. Twice. I expected it to go to voicemail. It was 7 o'clock on a Saturday. His wedding night. He should be at dinner laughing, giving a speech. He shouldn't be answering his phone. On the third ring, he picked up. The first thing that hit me was the noise. It wasn't the refined clink of crystal and the soft murmur of a high-end restaurant. It was loud, a cacophony of pop music announcements over a loudspeaker and the rumble of 1,000 conversations. It sounded like a stadium or an airport. "Dad," Andre's voice was high, breathless. Hey, is everything okay? I can't really talk right now. We're busy. Busy. I gripped the phone, a strange coldness seeping into my hand. Son, Andre, I'm at the restaurant, Veyrier. There was a pause. The background noise on his end seemed to swell and then fade as if he'd turned his head. What? What restaurant? The wedding restaurant. I said, my voice slow, patient. The one you texted me, Veyrier. I'm standing right outside. But it's locked, son. It's dark. Did the venue change? Did you forget to tell me? The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It stretched for 3 seconds. 4. 5. It was a cavernous, empty silence where I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. Then I heard it. It was muffled, him trying to cover the receiver with his hand. But he failed. I heard the sharp, frantic whisper of my daughter-in-law, Brooke. "Oh my God," she hissed. Her voice was pure venom. "He actually went. He really went to the fake place. Just tell him. Get it over with." Fake place. The words didn't just register. They slammed into my chest, knocking the air out of my lungs. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was a plan. A fake place. Andre came back on the line. His voice was a disaster. It was a high-pitched, desperate squeak, a performance of sudden, shocked realization. "Dad, oh man, oh man." Then he let out a short, barking laugh that held no humor, only panic. This is so awkward. I am so sorry. The wedding, right, the wedding was... Dad, the wedding was yesterday. I said nothing. I just stood on the dark sidewalk. My hand, the one in my pocket, was resting on the envelope. The $2 million envelope. Yesterday, I finally managed to say. My voice was a gravelly whisper. But the text. You texted me. Saturday. Veyrier. Yeah, I know. He was talking fast now, the words tumbling out, tripping over each other. It must have been a typo, a crazy autocorrect. You know how these new phones are, Dad. Just crazy. A typo and Brooke. She handled all the real invitations, the paper ones. You must not have gotten yours. Oh man, the mail. He laughed again. Dad, you know the mail stuff gets lost all the time, right? How ironic. You a postman, right? He was rambling. He was drowning in his own lie. Ironic, I thought. Ironic that I spent 42 years of my life delivering promises and my own son couldn't deliver a single truth. It was yesterday, I repeated. It wasn't a question, it was a finality. Yeah, he said, seizing on my quiet tone. At the Bel Air Country Club. It was beautiful, Dad. You would have... Well, it was just, mostly Brooke's family. We figured you'd want to avoid the fuss. Avoid the fuss. They had decided for me that I wouldn't want to be at my only son's wedding. Andre, I started, but I didn't know what to say. Look, Dad, I feel terrible. I really do. But I can't fix it right now. I heard her voice again. No whisper this time. Loud, imperious, impatient. Andre, turn it off, hurry. They're calling our flight. That's Brooke, he said, and I could hear the profound relief in his voice. He had his escape. We're literally at the gate at LAX. We're boarding for Bora Bora, our honeymoon. And he had been at the airport this whole time. Typo, I said. Yeah, a stupid typo. Look, we'll do a dinner or something when we get back. Just you and us. We'll make it up to you. Okay, I gotta go. I love you. Bye. The line clicked. Call ended. I lowered the phone from my ear. I looked at the dark screen. We'll make it up to you. He had hung up on me. He had lied to me. He had stolen the moment from me. He and that woman. They had decided I was not worthy of being there. I was the embarrassing retired postman who would have ruined their perfect, wealthy Bel Air wedding. They had treated me like garbage. I stood there under the dim streetlight, a 72-year-old man in a Brioni suit holding a $2 million check for a wedding that had already happened. A wedding I was never meant to attend. The phone clicked. I stood on the dark sidewalk, my arm still held to my ear, listening to the dead air. Call ended. I slowly lowered my hand. I looked at the dark, locked doors of Veyrier. I looked at the empty valet stand. I looked at the sign taped to the glass, closed for private event. A typo. An autocorrect. The mail. The lies were pathetic. They were weak. They were lazy. They hadn't even bothered to craft a believable story. They didn't respect me enough for that. They had given me an excuse a child would use a frantic scramble of words to get off the phone. They did it on purpose. The thought wasn't an accusation. It was a diagnosis. It was a cold, hard fact settling into place like a block of ice in my chest. They had given me a fake address and a fake date to keep me, the embarrassing old postman, away from their new, glittering life. I felt a profound, heavy sadness. It was the death of something. It was the death of the man I thought my son was. It was the death of the father I had tried to be for 45 years. And in that silence, as the sadness washed over me, something else rose up to take its place. It was cold. It was hard. It was the part of me that Lucille had always called the chairman, the part of me that built an empire from nothing, the part of me that does not tolerate betrayal. The father Isaiah was heartbroken, but the chairman, Mr. Thornton, was now wide awake. My hand went to the inner breast pocket of my Brioni jacket. The envelope was still there, crisp and heavy. I pulled it out. My hand was perfectly steady now. The tremor I'd felt earlier was gone. I opened the unsealed envelope and slid out the cashier's check. Harrison Private Bank, pay to the order of Andre and Brooke Thornton, $2 million and 00100. This was his future, his independence. This was the foundation I was giving him to build a life where he would never have to bow to people like Brooke or her fraudulent family. This was my love quantified in a way even they could understand. I held the check between my thumb and forefinger. I thought about Andre, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike. I thought about the man who just hung up on me to go to Bora Bora, the man who let his wife call our home a fake place. I brought my other hand up. I folded the check neatly in half, pressing the crease flat and sharp with my fingernail. Then I unfolded it. I tore it, right down the middle. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet night. A clean, final rip. It was the sound of a door slamming shut forever. It was the sound of a bloodline ending. I wasn't angry. I was precise. I put the two halves together, folded them, and tore again, and again. I didn't stop until the check was a small, confused handful of blue and white confetti. I walked to the metal trash can on the curb, the one I had stood beside during the phone call. I opened my hand. The pieces of my son's inheritance fluttered down, disappearing among old coffee cups and fast food wrappers. I let them go. I felt nothing at all. I walked back to the Lincoln. I didn't get in the driver's seat. I got in the back. I pulled out a different phone from my jacket, a sleek, modern smartphone Andre had never seen. I opened an app and typed one word, home. A minute later, a black, unmarked SUV, a customized armored Cadillac Escalade, pulled up silently behind the Lincoln. A man in a dark suit got out of the Escalade, walked to the Lincoln, got in, and drove it away. The driver of the Escalade, a man I knew only as Robert, opened my door for me. "Mr. Thornton, an unexpected change of plans this evening." "You could say that, Robert. Take me to the tower." "Yes, sir." We drove away from Veyrier. I didn't look back. We didn't drive south toward View Park. We drove east toward the glittering spires of downtown LA. Andre thought I lived in his childhood home. I did sometimes. But my residence was the entire top floor of the Griffin Thornton Tower, a 10,000-square-foot penthouse that overlooked the city like an eagle's nest, a place Andre didn't know existed, a place my name wasn't even listed on. The private elevator opened directly into the apartment. The lights came on automatically, revealing a vast space of dark wood, glass, and steel. It wasn't cozy or rustic. It was the home of a man who moved markets. It was my fortress. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down on the rivers of light, the millions of lives. I was no longer the man in the dark on the sidewalk. I was back on my throne. I picked up the secure phone on my desk. It rang only once. "Zay." Julian Griffin's voice was sharp, instantly awake even at this hour. "Jules, I need you." "What is it? What happened? Is it the deal in Rotterdam?" "No," I said, looking down at the lights of LA. "It's my son. He just tried to play me." There was a dead silence on Jules's end. He knew my rules about family. He knew what it meant for me to make this call. "Jules," I said, my voice cold and hard, "summon the legal team. 8 a.m. tomorrow. I want a full-spectrum investigation run on Andre, his wife Brooke, and her entire family, the Davenports." Jules didn't hesitate. "What are we looking for?" Everything I said, debts, assets, lies, I want to know who they really are. I want to know where my $50,000 went, and I want you to start drafting the paperwork to revise my will immediately. 8 a.m. Sunday. The city of Los Angeles was just waking up, the freeways still quiet. But on the 70th floor of the Griffin Thornton Tower, the day was already in full swing. The boardroom was a cavern of polished mahogany and glass overlooking the entire LA basin from the mountains to the sea. Julian Jules Griffin was pacing. He was 71, my contemporary, a tall, imposing man who favored hand-stitched suits and a permanently furrowed brow. He was the public face of our empire. He was the negotiator. And right now he was furious. I, on the other hand, was perfectly still. I sat at the head of the long table in the same charcoal Brioni suit I had worn the night before. I had not slept. I was staring at a blank legal pad, a cup of black coffee steaming untouched in front of me. A fake address. Jules spat, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. He slammed his open palm onto the mahogany. The sound was like a gunshot. A fake date, of all the low gutter snipe tricks. Zay, I told you, from the day he brought that woman home. I told you she was a viper. I told you she had dollar signs in her eyes. I looked up at him. My oldest friend, the man who'd held me up at Lucille's funeral. You did, I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used when I was closing a billion-dollar deal, not the voice of a grieving father. And Andre, Jules continued, his voice thick with anger, to let her, to help her, to lie to his own father. After everything you and Lucille, Zay, this isn't just disrespect. This isn't just greed. This is a declaration of war. No, I said quietly. Jules stopped pacing and looked at me. It's not war, Jules. It's pest control. I finally picked up the pen. Here's what we are going to do. First, I want a team on Andre and this woman, not our in-house security. I want the best. I want Kroll. Jules's eyebrows shot up. Kroll, the global intelligence firm, the one governments used. Zay, that's heavy artillery for a domestic issue. This stopped being a domestic issue when they decided to commit fraud, I said. I want to know everything. I want to know who Brooke Davenport really is. I want to know who her parents are. Andre mentioned a private fund that was tied up. I want to know if that fund exists. I want to know if they have $1 to their name or if they are just high-class grifters. Jules was already scribbling on his own notepad. The Davenports. Understood. What about the $50,000? My jaw tightened. The $50,000. The loan. He swore on Lucille's memory he would pay it back when the fund cleared. I want you to trace that check, Jules. I want to know the second it was cashed and where the money went. I want a complete financial autopsy. Every dime. He swore on Lucille, Jules said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. I'll have an answer for you by Tuesday. The check trace is easy. Good, I said. Second, I want a complete asset review on Andre. He thinks I'm a retired postman. He thinks his only inheritance is the house in View Park and a pension account. He has no idea about GT Logistics. He has no idea about the trusts, the holdings, the offshore accounts. I want to ensure he never knows. You want to cut him out, Jules said. It wasn't a question. I want to airlock him, Jules, I corrected. I want to revise my will, effective immediately. Everything. Every last penny, every share of GT, every brick. It all goes into a new irrevocable trust, the Lucille Thornton Education Trust. It will be dedicated to funding scholarships for underprivileged kids in Houston in her name. Jules paused. Zay, what about Maya, your granddaughter? I closed my eyes for a moment. Maya, my 5-year-old granddaughter. She was the one part of this that was still pure. You're right, I said. The View Park house. That was Lucille's dream house. It will go to Maya. We'll put it in a separate trust. You and I will be the sole trustees until she is 25. Andre and Brooke will not get a splinter of the floorboards. They will not have a key. They will not set foot in that house again. Done, Jules said, writing furiously. Third, I said, leaning forward, this is the most important part. I need to know why. Why this elaborate, stupid lie? If they needed money, why not just ask? Why go to all the trouble of faking a wedding date? Why humiliate me? Because they're weak, Jules said. No, I said. It's not just weakness, it's something else. It felt planned, like they wanted me to be confused, like they were testing me, like they were building a case. Jules stopped writing. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. Building a case. Zay, you don't think... I do, I said, the final cold piece of the puzzle falling into place. I think they are planning to have me declared incompetent. I think they believe I'm a lonely old fool with a house worth $1 million and a pension, and they want to take it. I think this fake wedding date was step one. They'll use it as proof that I'm losing my mind. They'll say I forgot my own son's wedding. Jules stared at me, his face pale with rage. They are going to try to put you under a conservatorship. That's the play, I confirmed. They think I'm a pawn. They don't know I'm the king. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to get me appointments with 3 of the top neurologists and psychiatrists in Los Angeles. I want a full cognitive evaluation. I want 3 signed, notarized affidavits stating that I am of sound mind and body. I want them on my desk before Andre gets back from Bora Bora. I'll schedule them for this week, Jules said, his voice grim. Good, I said, standing up. I walked to the window and looked down at the city. They are on their honeymoon. They think they've won. They think the simple old man is back in his cozy house, confused and heartbroken. Let them have their vacation. I turned to face my friend. Because when they get back, we're going to be ready. We're not just going to defend, we're going to attack. Jules nodded, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. This is going to be a very expensive lesson for them, Zay. Yes, I said. It is. They wanted a return on their investment. Well, I'm about to give it to them. It was Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. The California sun was streaming into my penthouse study, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The city below was a distant hum. I had been up since 4. I had already met with 2 of the 3 psychiatrists Jules had scheduled. 2 signed affidavits attesting to my sound mind were already sitting on my desk. I was waiting. At 9 on the dot, Jules walked in. He didn't knock. He hadn't knocked in 40 years. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp electric with the cold fury that I too was feeling. He was holding a single thin gray binder. It was stamped with one word, Carole. Zay. He said, his voice a low gravel. He didn't bother with greetings. He sat in the leather chair opposite my desk. The preliminary report is in. Phase 1 is complete. I leaned back in my chair. I steepled my fingers. I waited. I was no longer the heartbroken father on the sidewalk. I was the chairman. This was a damage report. Jules opened the binder. You asked about the $50,000, the loan. I remember, I said. It was a check from your View Park Credit Union account, Jules said, reading from the first page. You handed it to Andre at approximately 8:15 p.m. 3 months ago. He cashed it. He paused. At 10:04 a.m. the following morning. I nodded. No wasted time, not even a day of false gratitude. He had run straight to the bank. Go on. It was not deposited into his personal account, Zay. It was not deposited into a joint account. It was deposited directly in its entirety into a checking account belonging solely to Brooke Davenport. My son, my only son, had taken my money, the money Lucille and I had saved, and handed it directly to her, like a tribute, an offering to his new queen. She didn't wait either, Jules said, his voice laced with contempt. The Kroll team tracked the outflow. The money didn't sit in her account for more than an hour. The $50,000 was gone by noon that same day. I pictured them. Andre smiling relieved, thinking he had solved his problem, and Brooke sitting at her laptop, her eyes gleaming, finally getting her hands on what she believed was the first taste of my hidden savings. Where did it go, Jules? I asked. My voice was perfectly flat. Jules turned the page. The first transaction made at 10:17 a.m. was an electronic payment of $18,450. He looked up at me. To American Express Platinum Services, $18,000. He had told me he was struggling. He had told me it was a bridge loan. He was drowning in debt he had never mentioned. It was her card, Zay, not his. We pulled the statements. Jules pushed a sheaf of papers across the desk. The outstanding balance was for charges made in the 90 days prior to Andre's visit, Neiman Marcus, a weekend trip to Cabo San Lucas. For a pre-wedding getaway, a wellness and rejuvenation package at the Beverly Hilton Spa, my $50,000, my hard-earned money, Lucille's legacy. It was paying for facials. It was paying for resort wear for a woman who despised me. Jules continued, his voice a relentless monotone. Second transaction, 10:19 a.m., $12,000 wired to Saks Fifth Avenue. The wedding dress, I said the words tasting like ash. Jules let out a short, harsh laugh. No. The wedding dress was supposedly a family heirloom from her mother. We're checking on that. This was for accessories. A pair of Jimmy Choo shoes, a Celine handbag, a full set of matching Rimowa luggage. She had used my money to buy the very armor of wealth she wore to look down on me. She was financing her performance of superiority with my own bank account. That accounts for $30,450, I said, doing the math in my head. What about the rest? The rest, Jules said, is the real insult. He tapped the paper. $19,550, transferred directly to Andre's personal account. To pay the Bel Air Country Club? I asked. The deposit? No, Jules said, shaking his head. We'll get to the club later. This money, 10,000 of it, was used that same afternoon to purchase 2 first-class non-refundable tickets to Bora Bora. I stared at him. The honeymoon Zay. The one her rich father-in-law was supposedly paying for. The one my son hung up on me to go on. He paid for it. With my own money. So, when I was standing on that dark sidewalk, humiliated, holding a $2 million check, they were at LAX waiting to board a flight that I had paid for. The audacity of it. The sheer naked, breathtaking arrogance. And the last $9,550, I asked. Cash withdrawal, Jules said. At an ATM at LAX, Terminal B, right before they boarded, spending money for the trip. Jules closed the binder. The snap of the rings echoed in the silent room. So to summarize, of the $50,000 you lent your son for a venue deposit, $0 went to a venue. It all went to paying off his fiancé's luxury debts and funding the honeymoon they both lied to you about. They took your money, Zay. They took it, and they were laughing at you from 30,000 feet. Jules was finished. He leaned back. He was waiting for me to explode. He was waiting for me to curse my son's name. But the rage didn't come. It was something else. It was disappointment. It was a profound, sinking, heavy disappointment. It was cold. It wasn't the theft that hurt. $50,000, to me, that was a rounding error. It was the lie. It was the manipulation. It was the complete and utter lack of character. He had sworn on his mother's memory, and he had used the money to buy his wife new shoes. I had hoped, even after the fake wedding date, that maybe Andre was just weak, trapped, confused. But this report showed something else. This wasn't weakness. This was complicity. This was partnership. He wasn't trapped. He was a willing participant in his own corruption. I looked at Jules. He's not his mother's son. No, Zay, Jules said softly. He's her husband. I took a deep breath. The sadness settled and the coldness returned. The chairman was back in the chair. What's next, Jules? I asked. You said this was the preliminary report. Show me the rest. Jules's face hardened. He looked up from the papers detailing the $50,000 theft, and his eyes met mine. Zay, the $50,000. That was just an appetizer, he said, his voice dropping an octave. It's where this stops being pathetic and starts getting organized. He didn't turn the page in the binder. He closed it. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a second, thicker folder. This one was labeled simply Davenport, Franklin, and Alina. You asked about the private fund Andre mentioned. You asked about Brooke's lineage. I said nothing. I just waited. I did what you asked, Jules said. I put the Kroll team on them. Full financial and personal background. Zay, it's a house of cards. The whole thing is a lie. He slid a photograph across the polished mahogany. It was a stunning, sprawling cedar-shingled mansion set against the water. Let's start with the summer home in the Hamptons, Jules said. The one Brooke mentioned her mother's family owned. I remembered that first dinner. That casual, arrogant little drop of information. My mother's side. The Hamptons. It was the first stone she had laid in the foundation of her superiority. This is the house, Jules said. Sag Harbor, estimated worth $12.5 million. Impressive, I said. It is, Jules agreed. It belongs to Brooke's uncle, her mother's brother, Michael Stratton. He's a legitimate real estate mogul in New York, and according to the Kroll team who spoke to his attorney, Franklin and Elena Davenport haven't been invited there in over a decade. He apparently refers to them as the Locusts. The first brick crumbled. A borrowed piece of someone else's life presented as her own. So, the mother's side is a fabrication, I said. What about the father Franklin, the private equity man? Ah, yes, Jules said, a dark amusement in his voice. Franklin Davenport, the man Andre was so impressed by. Jules opened the new folder. Franklin did run a fund, Davenport Capital Partners. It was registered in Delaware in 2010. It had a good 3-year run leveraging commercial real estate in Arizona and Nevada. But he was sloppy, Zay. He was all flash, no foundation. He overleveraged, got caught in a bad market dip, and tried to double down. Jules tapped the paper. He was wiped out, completely. Davenport Capital Partners was formally dissolved in 2020. It's defunct, insolvent. He slid another document across the desk. It was a public record. He filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 2 years ago, Zay. They lost everything. The house in Greenwich, the cars, everything. The air in the penthouse study felt thin. This wasn't just not rich. This was a spectacular, devastating failure. But the suits, I said, thinking of their immaculate presentation. The talk of standards. The Bel Air Country Club. A performance, Jules said, his voice hard. The most desperate performance of their lives. They've been living on high-interest, unsecured credit ever since. They are kiting checks, Zay, moving money between accounts just to stay afloat. The Kroll report estimates their personal debt at just over $400,000. I saw it all clearly now. The condescending looks, the pity for my simple life. It was all a projection. They were the ones who were terrified. They were the ones who were poor. So Andre, I said, the pieces clicking into place, he didn't marry into wealth. He married into a fraud. It's worse than that, Zay. Jules leaned forward and the last shred of humor left his face. They weren't just pretending for Andre, they were targeting him. Or more specifically, they were targeting you. He turned the page. The team pulled their electronic records. 2 weeks after Brooke met Andre, her parents ran a full background check on him. They were disappointed. He was just a mid-level manager with a modest salary. So why pursue him? I asked. Because Jules said they also ran a check on you. My heart went still. What did they find? Jules almost smiled. Nothing. That's the beauty of how we structured this, Zay. Your name isn't on the GT masthead. Your assets are firewalled in nested trusts. All they saw was exactly what you wanted them to see: Isaiah Thornton, retired postal worker, widower, owner of a single paid-off property in View Park, a modest fixed pension. I was confused. So, if they thought I was poor, why the long con? Why the wedding? Zay, Jules said, his voice soft. Don't think like a billionaire. Think like a desperate bankrupt con man. That simple house in View Park. In this current LA market, it has an estimated value of $1.8 million. And to them, $1.8 million is not modest. It's a jackpot. It's the score they've been waiting for. It hit me. It hit me like a physical blow. They didn't think I was rich, Zay. Jules continued, driving the point home. They thought you were the perfect target. A lonely, trusting old man, getting on in years, sitting on a single valuable liquid asset, with a weak, easily manipulated son as the sole heir. The puzzle was complete. The visits, the talk of downsizing, the condescension, the casual cruelty. It was all designed to isolate me, to make Andre see me as a burden. The fake wedding date, that wasn't just to avoid embarrassment, it was to create an incident, a moment they could point to. They weren't trying to marry into money. I whispered the full sickening scope of the plan laid bare. They were trying to steal an inheritance, my home, Lucille's home. That was the plan, Jules confirmed. The wedding was phase 1, get Andre legally tied to Brooke and her family. Phase 2 was to isolate you. Phase 3 would be to get you out of that house, either by convincing you or by other means. And the $50,000 I gave them, that was just a bonus, Jules said. A little cherry on top, an unexpected investment from the target himself. They must have laughed all the way to Bora Bora. They used your money to pay for the honeymoon they were taking after deliberately excluding you from the wedding. I stood up. I walked to the vast window, looking down at the city but seeing nothing. My son wasn't just blinded by love. He wasn't just weak. He was an active participant in a long-term calculated con against his own father. He and his new wife and her bankrupt, fraudulent parents. They were a pack of jackals, circling, waiting for me to die. Or worse, waiting to make me disposable. I turned back to Jules. The disappointment was gone. The sadness had burned away, leaving something cold and hard in its place. "Jules," I said. My voice was ice. "What else?" Jules stared at me. His face was a mask of controlled fury. He was a man who lived in a world of contracts, numbers, and leverage. What he was about to tell me was outside that world. It was something personal, something ugly. "Zay," he said, and his voice was quieter now, which always meant he was more dangerous. "The 50,000 was the how. The Davenport fraud was the why. This..." He paused, tapping a third, very thin manila folder he had placed on the desk. "This is the what's next." He slid the folder toward me. It wasn't a Kroll report. It was just a few pages printed from a web browser. "They are stupid, Zay. They are arrogant and they are stupid. They use their home internet, the same IP address they used to book their fake honeymoon. The Kroll team pulled their complete search history and their email backups from the last 6 months." My heart didn't pound. It just stopped. This was it. This was the answer. "Why, Jules?" I whispered. "Why the lie about the wedding?" "Because," Jules said, "you were right. You said it yourself. They were building a case." He turned the first page over for me to read. It was a printout of an email from Brooke Davenport to Isaiah Thornton. The subject line read, "The future." "Andre, darling," it said, "we need to talk about your father. I am truly, truly worried about him." I looked at Jules. "This was sent 2 months ago," he said. "The day after you told them you weren't interested in selling the View Park house." I read on. "He's clearly not managing well on his own. He's isolated. He's forgetting things. He told me that story about his time in the army. Again. He's clearly showing signs of cognitive decline. My parents and we just think it's irresponsible to let him manage an asset like that house when he's not in his right mind." I looked up, my blood running cold. "Jules, I was never in the army." "I know," Jules said grimly. "I told you, she's a viper. She was inventing symptoms. She was manufacturing a false history of dementia and feeding it to your son." I turned the page. Andre's reply. "Brooke, I don't know. He seems fine to me. He's just old. He's always been quiet." And her response sent 10 minutes later, a response that sealed my son's fate. "Quiet or confused Andre, he almost called me Lucille yesterday. He is clearly living in the past. This isn't a joke. This is his safety. If he's this confused, he could be a danger to himself. He could fall. He could leave the stove on. He could give all his money away to a scammer." Her words leaped off the page. "We need to protect him. We need to step in and manage his affairs before he loses that house to some telemarketer. My father knows a lawyer, a specialist in elder care." I gripped the armrests of my chair. I never once called her Lucille." "She was building a narrative, Zay," Jules said. "And your son was buying it, or at least he was letting himself be convinced." He pushed the next page toward me. "Now look at this. Their search history, from their home computer, starting 2 months ago." I read the list. Each line item was a nail in my son's coffin. 10:30 p.m. How to get power of attorney for elderly parent in California. 10:37 p.m. Signs of early onset dementia versus normal aging. 10:45 p.m. Legal definition of mentally incompetent, California. 11:02 p.m. What is a conservatorship? 11:15 p.m. How to prove a parent is a danger to themselves. 11:30 p.m. Quickest way to gain control of elderly parents' assets. 11:45 p.m. Can a conservator sell a parent's house? I put the paper down. I had to. My hands were shaking. This was not greed. Greed, I understood. I had built an empire negotiating with greedy men. Greed is simple. Greed is a business transaction. This was evil. This was a plan to put me in a cage, to strip me of my name, my mind, my freedom, to take my house, Lucille's house, and sell it, to lock me in a home where I would be fed pills by some stranger until I actually became the confused old man they were pretending I was. This was not theft. This was murder of the soul. And my son Andre, he was a part of it. "Zay," Jules said, his voice soft but heavy, There's one more. The last email, from Brooke to Andre, 4 weeks ago, the day after he texted you the fake wedding details. I steeled myself and picked it up. The subject line read, Step 1. It's done, Brooke wrote. He has the wrong date and the wrong place. This is the big one, honey. When he misses the wedding, it's the proof we need. It's not just forgetting keys. This is a major, undeniable cognitive failure. He'll call confused and upset. When he does, you just be so sorry, so concerned. Tell him he must have gotten it wrong. We'll use this as the primary incident when we file the petition. No judge will ignore a man forgetting his only son's wedding. This is it. We're finally going to save him from himself, and we'll finally be able to solve our problems. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the mahogany floor. The fake date, the fake restaurant, the typo. It was all a calculated performance, a setup. They were counting on me to call confused. They were hoping I would sound lost and old. They were building their case. They had weaponized my love for my son against me. They had turned his wedding day into the first exhibit in a court case designed to destroy me. They set me up, I whispered. Yes, Jules said. They manufactured incident number 1. They were going to let you sit in that dark restaurant heartbroken. They were going to let you feel the humiliation, and they were going to use that humiliation as a legal weapon. I stood up. I walked to the vast window. I looked down at the city, at the tiny, insignificant cars moving below. They thought I was one of them, a speck of dust, a confused old man with a modest pension and a house that was ripe for the picking. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had no idea the power they were trying to poke. The heartbreak I'd felt on that sidewalk was gone. The disappointment I'd felt over the $50,000 was gone. All of it was gone, burned away by a clean, cold, righteous fury. This was not a family matter. This was a hostile takeover, and I was about to mount a defense that would liquidate their entire company. I turned back to Jules. The father was gone. The chairman was in the room. They're on their honeymoon, I said. In Bora Bora. On my money. 10 days, Jules confirmed. Their flight lands at LAX on the 21st. Good, I said. That gives us time to work. They want to prove I'm confused. They want to prove I'm losing my mind. They think I'm a lonely, vulnerable old man. Jules watched me, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. He knew this side of me. He had seen it destroy competitors worth billions. What's the play, Zay? The play, I said, is that they are absolutely right. I am a confused old man. I'm devastated that I missed the wedding. I'm so heartbroken and foggy. I can't even remember what I did with their wedding gift. Jules' smile widened. The $2 million check. What check? I said, my voice suddenly frail, confused. I had a check, I don't remember. Was it 2,000 or was it 2 million? Oh dear. My memory is it's just so foggy these days. I met my oldest friend's gaze. I'm going to need you to spread a rumor, Jules. I need you to call that loud-mouthed cousin of mine Thelma, the one who repeats everything. Jules was already dialing. What should I tell her, Zay? You tell her. I said that you're worried about me, that I'm not myself, that I'm rambling about missing the wedding and losing a very large wedding check, a life-changing amount of money. Tell her I keep patting my pockets saying, I've lost it. I've lost it all. Oh, this is good, Jules chuckled. They're hunting a wounded animal, I said. Let's show them exactly where to find the bait. And Jules, get Dr. Kaplan and Dr. and Singh on the line. I need those final 2 cognitive evaluations on my desk by Friday. I want them notarized in triplicate. I sat back down at my desk. The jackals thought the lion was dying. It was time to remind them why I was king. I spent the next 3 days methodically, clinically dismantling my life, or at least the life my son thought I had. Jules and I sat in his office, not the grand boardroom, but his private study on the 70th floor, surrounded by legal books and art from his travels. A stack of freshly printed documents sat between us. First, Jules said, sliding a thick document toward me. The View Park house, Lucille's house. I picked up my pen. It was a Mont Blanc heavy and cold in my hand. This, Jules explained, is the final deed of transfer. It moves the property from Isaiah Thornton individual into the Maya Thornton Irrevocable Education Trust. Effective immediately. You and I are the sole administrators. Isaiah Thornton and Brooke Davenport are explicitly barred from using the property as collateral residence or from receiving any proceeds from its potential sale. I signed my name, Isaiah Thornton, a simple signature that undid 40 years of inheritance. It was done. Lucille's house was safe. Maya's future was safe, from her own father. Next, Jules said, sliding a much thinner document over, the $50,000 loan. I looked at it. It was a formal promissory note, a demand for immediate repayment. It details the check number, the date it was cashed, and the account it was deposited into Brooks, Jules said. It has a standard interest clause of 8% retroactive to the date of the loan. It is legally ironclad. He'll ignore it, I said. He'll say I was confused when I gave it to him. Let him. Jules smiled a cold, thin smile. It's not for him. It's for the court. This is Exhibit A in our fraud case. Sign it. I signed it. Finally, Jules said, handing me 3 identical folders. Your cognitive evaluations. Dr. Mendez, Dr. Singh, and Dr. Kaplan. All 3 find you in the 99th percentile for cognitive function for a man of your age. They state, and I quote, Mr. Thornton's recall reasoning and financial acumen are exceptionally sharp. Each copy is notarized. I tapped the folders. Good. Put them in the vault. We won't need them until the performance. With the paperwork signed, the armor was in place. Now it was time to set the trap. I picked up my postman phone, the simple flip phone Andre knew. I looked at Jules. Ready. Let's go fishing, Zay, he said. I dialed a number I knew by heart, my cousin Thelma. A good woman, but a woman who believed information was a currency meant to be spent, and she spent it liberally. She loved gossip more than she loved breathing. Thelma, it's Isaiah. Yes, it's been a while. I put the phone on speaker. I hunched my shoulders. I let my voice crack. I became the man they thought I was. Thelma, I don't know who to talk to. I'm so terribly upset. Isaiah, what is it, honey? You sound awful. Is it Andre? Is he okay? It's the wedding, I said, letting a small sob catch in my throat. Thelma, I missed it. I missed my own son's wedding. You what? Her voice went up an octave. The bait was in the water. Andre. He told me it was Saturday. I'm sure he did, but he says it was Friday. He says I must have gotten confused. He says I'm getting forgetful. Oh, Lord, have mercy, Isaiah. You forgot his wedding. I don't think I forgot, I said, my voice rising in false panic. But maybe I did. My mind, it's just so foggy lately. And Thelma, that's not the worst part. What's worse than that, child? The gift, I whispered, as if I were afraid of being overheard. I went to the bank. I took out a check. A big one. I wanted to surprise him. Set him up for life, you know. A big check. How big, Isaiah? I can't even remember, Thelma. That's the problem. Was it 2,000 or was it 2 million? I can't find it. I think I lost it. I had it in my suit. I'm sure I did, but now it's gone. What if I threw it away? What if someone stole it? $2 million. Jules was covering his mouth, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. $2 million, Thelma shrieked. Isaiah Thornton, you call the police, you call the bank, you lost a $2 million check. I can't, I cried. Andre, he'll be so angry. He's on his honeymoon. Oh, Thelma, I think I've ruined everything. I'm just an old fool, a confused old fool. I hung up the phone, my performance complete. Jules and I sat in silence for a moment. She'll call her daughter first, Jules calculated. Her daughter will post it on Facebook. Andre's cousin Jerome follows her. He'll see it. He'll text Andre in Bora Bora. How long do you give it? I asked. Before they cut their trip short, Jules checked his watch. I give them 12 hours. He was wrong. It took 8. Jules's private phone rang at 4 a.m. the next morning. It was the Kroll team leader stationed in French Polynesia. Mr. Griffin, target is on the move. Mr. and Mrs. Thornton just checked out of the St. Regis. They've chartered a private seaplane to Papeete. They're booked on the first commercial flight back to L.A. They'll land at LAX at 7:00 p.m. tomorrow. They look agitated. Jules hung up and called me. They took the bait, Zay. They're coming home. I was sitting in my penthouse watching the sunrise. They're coming home to hunt a wounded animal, I said. They think they're coming to take control of a senile old man's $1.8 million house. They have no idea, I said, that they're really coming to try and claim a $2 million check. They're about to expose just how greedy they really are. The trap was set, the bait was out, the jackals were on the plane. All I had to do now was go back to View Park, put on my old sweater, and wait in my cozy little house, ready to play the part of a confused, broken, and very vulnerable old man. I was in the armchair when they arrived, the one Lucille had covered in that soft, worn chenille. I had the lights in the living room turned down low, just a single dim yellow lamp by my side. I had a copy of Ebony magazine from 1994 on my lap upside down. I'd practiced my breathing. Slow, a little shallow. I was the very picture of a man fading away. I heard the key scrape in the lock. Andre still had his key. The door flew open, hitting the wall with a bang that made me jump, which was perfect. Dad, are you here? Are you okay? Andre rushed in first, his face a mask of practiced theatrical worry. He was still tan from Bora Bora. He wore linen pants and an expensive unbuttoned shirt. He looked like a tourist. He stopped when he saw me, his eyes quickly scanning the dim room before landing on me. Dad, he breathed, rushing over to kneel at my feet. Oh my God, you're just sitting in the dark. We were so worried. He grabbed my hand. His was clammy despite the tan. Brooke glided in behind him. She was a vision in white linen, her blonde hair pulled back. She held a large, expensive straw bag. She didn't rush. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed her eyes, doing the real work. She scanned the room, her gaze sharp, assessing. She was looking for signs. She was hunting. Andre San, I said, blinking slowly as if pulling myself up from a deep fog. You're back. What happened? Your honeymoon? We cut it short, Dad, Andre said, his voice dripping with false empathy. He squeezed my hand. We couldn't relax, not after we heard. We got a call from cousin Thelma. She said you weren't well, Dad, that you were confused. Brooke finally moved, gliding forward, her face now arranged in a look of profound, gentle concern. It was a masterpiece of acting. Isaiah, she said, her voice a soft, sympathetic coo. She sat on the arm of the chair, not close enough to truly comfort, but close enough to loom. We are so sorry about the wedding. It was all just a terrible mix-up with the invitations. We feel just awful. I looked up at her, letting my eyes seem watery and unfocused. You do, of course, she said, patting my shoulder. But, Isaiah, Thelma said something else. She said you were very upset, that you thought you'd lost something. I flinched. I looked away from her toward the cold fireplace as if in deep shame. I don't know what she's talking about. I'm just tired. Dad, Andre cut in. His impatience was a sharp blade under the velvet of his concern. Dad, listen to me. Thelma said you lost something. Something important. She said you kept rambling about a gift. A check. I squeezed my eyes shut. I put my hand to my temple. Oh, I whispered. That. It's all so foggy. My mind, it just hasn't been right since that night. I missed it. I let my voice crack. I missed my son's wedding. I went to the wrong place. We know, Dad. We know, Andre said, patting my knee. His eyes, however, were not kind. They were sharp. They were hungry. But this check, Dad. Let's focus on the check. We need to help you. Did you write a check? I looked up, my eyes wide with what I hoped looked like dawning horror. Yes, a check. A wedding gift. I had it in my suit pocket. The good one. The Brioni suit. Brooke's eyes flashed. I saw it. The name registered. Brioni. A postman in a Brioni suit. The first crack in their narrative. She filed it away, but the greed was stronger. I went to the restaurant. I continued, my voice frail. The dark restaurant. And I was so upset. I came home, and the envelope, it was gone. Just gone. Gone! Brooke's voice was a sharp squeak. She forgot to sound sympathetic. You mean, you lost it? You just lost it? I think so, I said, wringing my hands. I'm so stupid. I'm so old and stupid. No, Isaiah, you're not stupid. Brooke said, her voice sliding back into its silken sheath. She knelt next to Andre, putting her perfectly manicured hand on my other arm. They were on either side of me. A two-person cage. We just need to help you retrace your steps. This check, it's vital we know the amount, so we can, cancel it with the bank. Yes, Andre said a little too quickly. The amount, Dad. Try to remember, for the bank, how much was it? This was the moment, the hook, the line, the sinker. I looked up, my eyes wide and lost. The amount. Oh dear, that's the worst part. I can't quite. It was a lot. I'd been saving for so long. I wanted to set you up for your new life. Brooke was barely breathing. She was leaning so close I could smell the faint scent of coconut from her sunscreen. How much, Isaiah? Try to remember. Was it $10,000? I shook my head, my eyes squeezed shut. No more than that. 50,000. Andre pushed his voice tight. I don't think so, I whispered. I think it started with a T or no, wait. Was it 2,000? Brooke's face fell. I saw it. The mask slipped. The disappointment was so naked, so profound, it was almost comical. 2,000. All this for 2,000. No, wait, I said, my eyes flying open as if in a sudden painful jolt of memory. That's not right. Two. Oh Lord, I'm so confused. I think it was 2 million. The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Brooke made a small sound in the back of her throat, a gasp that was swallowed before it could become a scream. Andre's hand, which was still on my knee, tightened like a vice. His knuckles went white. 2 million, he repeated. His voice was a strangled whisper. I think so, I said. I let the tears, real tears of rage, well up in my eyes. I think I lost a $2 million check. I've ruined everything. I'm just an old fool, Andre. A confused old useless fool. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing, but I was sobbing to hide the smile. Through my fingers I watched them. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at each other. The mask of concern was gone. The fake sympathy had evaporated. Their eyes were wide, blazing nakedly, terrifyingly alive, with a greed so profound it was ecstatic. They weren't looking at a father. They weren't looking at a heartbroken old man. They were looking at a senile, walking, talking lottery ticket. Dad, Andre said. His voice was trembling, but not with concern. It was trembling with adrenaline. Dad, it's okay, don't cry. Brooke was the first to recover. Her face smoothed, her eyes narrowed. She was calculating. Isaiah, she said, her voice now a thick, heavy syrup of kindness. It's all right. This is not your fault. This just proves what we were worried about. She stroked my arm. You're clearly under too much stress. You can't be expected to manage things like this on your own. It's too much for you. But the money, I whimpered. 2 million. Shh, Andre said, joining in. We'll find it, Dad. We'll search the house. We'll call the bank. We'll handle it. He looked at Brooke. A silent, perfect communication passed between them. We're home now, Andre said, his voice full of a new terrible strength. We're going to take care of you. From now on, we'll take care of everything. The trap was sprung. The jackals had just offered to guard the hen house. They were taking care of me. Andre's hand was a heavy proprietary weight on my arm. Brooke's fingers stroked my shoulder with a touch that felt like ice. They were kneeling, a perfect portrait of loving concern, but their eyes were shining. They were looking at each other over my head, their faces glowing with the ecstatic, terrible light of $2 million. Dad, Andre said, his voice a thick, comforting syrup. You're so tired. You're so worried. Don't you think about that check. Don't you worry about a single thing. We're home now. We'll handle it all. But 2 million, I murmured, letting my voice crack and tremble. It was all I had saved for you, son. For you and for Maya. I felt Brooke's fingers tighten on my shoulder. I saw her eyes narrow for just a fraction of a second. Maya, my granddaughter. The trust fund I'd mentioned for her was not part of their plan. Shh, Isaiah, she cooed, her smile snapping back into place. It's all right. We will find it. We just need to help you remember. And her voice was kind, the voice you use for a child or an idiot. Where were you? before you went to the restaurant. The fake restaurant. The fake restaurant. I repeated, my eyes wide as if the concept was too complex. It was fake. No, Andre said, shooting Brooke a look of pure, venomous fury. He was furious she'd let it slip. She means the restaurant you thought it was at. Dad, just think. Your suit. You said you had it in your suit. My suit, I repeated, grasping the word like a lifeline. Yes, my good suit, the Brioni. Brooke's eye twitched again at the brand name, a postman in a Brioni suit. The detail didn't fit her narrative, but the greed was stronger. I came home, I said, my voice distant, gazing at the cold fireplace. I was so sad, I took it off. I think I put it in the closet. Okay, Dad, Andre said, standing up. He was vibrating with impatience. Okay, good. That's good. We'll look. I'll go check the closet right now. No, I said. I grabbed his wrist. My grip was sudden and stronger than a frail old man should be. They both froze. I saw their eyes meet again. He's stronger than he looks. I immediately let my hand fall away, making it tremble. No, I whispered as if ashamed. I remember now. I didn't put it in the closet. I had it. I was angry. Angry. Brooke's voice was sharp as scalpel. Why were you angry, Isaiah? Because, I said, letting the tears well up, the real tears of rage and humiliation. Because I missed it. I missed my son's wedding. I thought if I missed the wedding, you didn't need the gift. I thought it was all spoiled. Andre's face went chalk white. Dad, what are you saying? What did you do? I didn't answer him. I just pointed a trembling finger toward the old mahogany desk where I kept my postman checkbook. I was sitting right there. I had the envelope in my hand. I was so confused. Isaiah, Brooke said. Her voice was no longer a coo. It was a low, dangerous command. Where is the envelope? I pushed myself up from the armchair, a performance of frail, aching joints. I think I put it in the trash. The trash! Andre yelped. He didn't walk. He sprinted. He dove into the kitchen. I heard the metal lid of the kitchen bin clang against the wall. I heard the frantic, wet sound of him digging through the coffee grounds and vegetable peels. It's not here, he screamed. His voice was a high-pitched panic. Dad, the trash is empty. The garbage truck. It must have come this morning. Brooke's face collapsed. For one beautiful second I saw the real her, a mask of pure reptilian rage. She looked at me, her mouth a thin white line. You stupid, old, she began, her voice a low hiss. No, I said, cutting her off, my timing perfect. No, not the kitchen trash. I was at the desk. I used the small one. I pointed to the elegant leather-bound wastebasket next to my desk. They moved as one. It was a blur. They both lunged for it, nearly knocking each other over. Andre got there first. He grabbed the small basket, upended it onto Lucille's rug. A few crumpled receipts, a tissue, and nothing. It was empty. It's gone, Andre whispered, staring at the small pile of trash. He looked at me, his eyes wild. Dad, where is it? I don't know, I whimpered. Oh, wait. I shuffled over to my desk. I pulled open the top drawer, the one that was messy, the one full of old pens, paper clips, rubber bands. I think I tore it up, I said, my voice barely audible. But I didn't throw it away. I kept it, right here. I reached into the back of the drawer and pulled out a small white envelope. They both stopped breathing. I opened the flap and poured the contents into my trembling palm. A small pile of confetti, blue and white, high-security paper, the remains of $2 million. Andre stared at my hand. Brooke just stared. I was just so upset, I whispered, my voice breaking with a perfect imitation of confused grief. I just tore it up. I thought it was just junk mail, just little pieces. Brooke let out a sound. It was not a word. It was a high-pitched, strangled keening like an animal caught in a trap. You, she whispered. You tore it. It was just a mistake, I whimpered, playing my role to the hilt. It was just $2,000, wasn't it? I can write you another one. I have my checkbook. I began to shuffle back toward the desk. 2,000. Andre's voice wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a question. It was a roar. It exploded out of him, a sound of such profound, agonizing loss that it rattled the photo frames on the mantel. 2,000! He screamed, his face turning a dark, mottled purple. Brooke was on her knees, frantically snatching the pieces from the rug where I'd accidentally dropped them. Andre, look, she shrieked, her voice cracking. This H. This M. Andre. He's right. Oh my God, look at the number. Andre snatched the pieces from her. His hands were shaking so violently he could barely hold them. He held two of the scraps under the dim lamplight. I saw the piece he was holding. It had a 2 followed by 3 zeros, and another piece right next to it with more zeros. No, Andre whispered. No, 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 no. He turned to me. His eyes were no longer filled with fake concern. They were the eyes of a wolf. He grabbed me by the shoulders of my old sweater, shoving me back. Dad, what did you do? That wasn't 2,000. That was $2 million. You tore up $2 million. His shout echoed through the small, quiet house. Brooke just sank to the floor, not in a faint, in a boneless heap. 2 million, she was saying over and over again, her voice dead. He tore up 2 million. 2 million. I let my jaw drop. I looked at him, my eyes wide with a perfect mask of senile terror. 2 million, son. No, that can't be right. My checkbook, it can't, would never. 2 million. I clutched my chest. Oh, my heart, I must have made a terrible mistake. A typo on the check. Oh, God. 2 million. My confession was the final nail. Andre let go of me, shoving me back into the armchair. He was panting, his eyes wild. He looked at Brooke, who was still on the floor, rocking. He looked at the confetti in his hand. He's lost it, Andre said. His voice was flat, dead. All the rage was gone, replaced by a terrifying, cold resolution. He's completely gone. He doesn't even know what he's doing. Brooke looked up at him. Her face was a terrifying, tear-streaked mask of fury and sudden dawning opportunity. Yes, she whispered, a new sharp light coming into her eyes. Yes, he is. This is it, Andre. This is exactly what the lawyer said we needed. This is the proof. Andre nodded slowly. He looked at me. He was no longer seeing a father. He was seeing a broken vault. A senile, incompetent $2 million problem. It's okay, Dad, he said, his voice now chillingly calm, soothing. You just rest. Don't worry about the check. Brooke and we're going to make some calls. We're going to get you some help. They walked out of the living room, leaving me alone in the dim light. I heard them in the kitchen, their voices low, urgent, and angry. Call the lawyer, now, I heard Brooke hiss. The hunt was over. The jackals were now moving in for the kill, and I had just given them the perfect reason to do it. I sat there in the dim light of Lucille's armchair. I heard them. The kitchen was just down the hall, but their voices were no longer hushed, careful whispers. They were sharp. They were angry. He tore it up, Brooke hissed. Her voice was a low, violent vibration. He sat right in that chair, looked you in the eye, and tore up $2 million. That's senile, malicious. I cannot believe this. What do we do? Andre's voice was high, panicked. What can we do? It's gone. He tore it up. He admitted it. My God. Brooke, 2 million. Stop panicking, Andre, she snapped. Her voice turned cold, precise, calculating. This doesn't change anything. It confirms everything. It's the proof. It's exactly the proof the lawyer said we needed. Proof of what? That he is mentally incompetent, that he cannot manage his own affairs, he is a danger to himself. He just destroyed a fortune. Andre, call the lawyer, the one my father recommended. Call him now. Tell him the primary incident just happened. Tell him we're executing the plan. I heard the beep of a phone being unlocked. They weren't even trying to hide. They believed I was deaf, as well as senile. They believed I was just a piece of furniture in the next room while they calmly, coldly decided my fate. The father in me, the one who had held Andre's hand as he learned to walk, was dead. The chairman was listening, and he was pleased. The trap was sprung. They came back into the living room. The performance was over. Brooke's face was no longer soft with that fake syrupy concern. It was a hard white mask of fury. Her eyes were like 2 blue chips of ice. Andre stood behind her, his face pale, but his jaw was set. He had made his choice. Isaiah, she said, not Dad, not Mr. Thornton. I flinched, playing my part. I looked up as if startled from a nap. Brooke, dear, is everything all right? Did you find the pieces? I'm so sorry, Stop it, she spat. The mask was gone. Just stop it. Stop playing stupid. You know what you did? You tore up our future. You tore up Maya's future. Brooke, Andre said, grabbing her arm, not like this. We agreed. We're doing this to help him. No, she said, shaking his arm off. I'm done helping. I am done being polite. I have been patient. I have coddled this postman for 2 years waiting for you to handle it. And now he burns $2 million in a wastebasket because he's foggy. She was pacing now, a caged animal. This ends today. I watched her, the real her. The Hamptons lineage and the private equity father were all just cheap costumes. This was the truth. This was the gutter she had crawled out of. Brooke, I whispered, my voice trembling. I don't understand. I said I was sorry. It was a mistake. I thought it was 2000. Andre stepped forward. He put his hands on his hips. He was no longer my son. He was her husband. He was her accomplice. Dad, Bob, he said. His voice was cold, devoid of all emotion. Brooke she's just upset. We are both upset, but she is right. This incident with the check, it's the final straw. Final straw? I repeated, my voice small. We've been worried about you for months, Dad, he said, weaving the narrative I had so carefully fed him. Ever since you started forgetting things. The missed wedding, that was the big one. We thought we could manage it. We thought we could help you, but this... He gestured wildly at the desk, at the confetti on the floor. Tearing up $2 million. You're a danger to yourself. You're a danger to your own finances. He was pacing now, just like her. What if you'd done that with the house, Dad? What if you'd forgotten and signed the deed over to some telemarketer? You could lose everything. Brooke crossed her arms, a smug, cold look of victory on her face. He's right, Isaiah. You need supervision. You need professional help. You cannot be trusted with your own money anymore. You just proved it. I looked from her face to his. Andre, supervision. What are you saying? This is my house. It is your house, Dad, Andre said, his voice hard. And it's a $1.8 million asset, and you're treating it and your money like scrap paper. He stopped pacing. He stood directly in front of me, forcing me to look up at him. His eyes were cold, empty. All the warmth Lucille and I had poured into him for 45 years. It was gone. Brooke and we spoke to a lawyer weeks ago. Weeks ago. The lie about the private fund was still fresh, but they had been planning this for weeks. We were hoping, he continued, that we wouldn't have to do this. We were hoping you'd cooperate, that you'd see reason. But after this, you've forced our hand. Do what? I whispered. We are filing a petition for conservatorship. Andre said, the words dropping like stones in the quiet room. Effective immediately, we are taking control of your affairs. Brooke stepped forward, adding the final killing blow. It's to protect you, Isaiah. We will manage your assets. We will, of course, sell this house. It's far too large for you. And we will use the money to move you into a wonderful facility, a secure place, she smiled, with people your own age, where you can be monitored, where you can't hurt yourself anymore. A facility, a home. They were going to sell Lucille's house, my house, and lock me away, all for money. Home, I said, my voice breaking. You're putting me in a home. Andre couldn't look at me. He stared at the wall over my head. It's the only way, Dad. It's for your own good. We're taking over. The lawyer is drawing up the papers as we speak. He'll be here tomorrow with the petition. It's done. They stood there, triumphant. The jackals. They'd just cornered the old lion. They thought the fight was over. They thought they'd won. I let the silence sit. I let them enjoy their victory for a long, cold moment. I looked at my son, the boy I raised, now a stranger. I looked at the viper he married. I let my body tremble. I looked up, my eyes wide and full of fear. A lawyer tomorrow, I said, my voice a frail whisper. Oh dear, that's so sudden. I guess I should call my lawyer too then. Brooke actually laughed. A short, ugly barking sound. Your lawyer. What lawyer, Isaiah? The guy who wrote your 1995 will. He's probably dead just like your mind. It doesn't matter who you call. It's done. We're in charge now. I nodded slowly. I looked down at my hands. Oh, he's not dead, I whispered as if to myself. No, he's very much alive. He's very good. I should call him. I should call Jules. Andre frowned. Jules, who's Jules? Julian Griffin, I said, still whispering. My old friend. He handles my paperwork. I think I should call him. Brooke rolled her eyes and turned away, dismissing me. Call whoever you want, old man. It won't change a thing. Call whoever you want, old man, Brooke scoffed. She turned her back on me, a gesture of pure final dismissal. It won't change a thing. Andre, let's go to the kitchen. We need to call my father and tell him the good news. He'll be so relieved we're finally handling this. Good news, I whimpered, the tremor in my voice perfectly rehearsed, putting me in a home. It's good news for us, Isaiah, she said without even looking back. It means we can finally move forward. Andre hesitated. He looked at me, his face a mask of conflict. I saw a flicker of something. Guilt. Pity it didn't matter. It was too weak. He turned and followed his wife. Brooke, wait. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a gentle knock. It was a sharp, clean, authoritative chime. Andre and Brooke froze in the hallway. Who is that? Brooke snapped, clearly irritated by the interruption to her victory. Are you expecting someone? I blinked, my confused mask firmly in place. Oh, I don't think so, unless that's Jules. Oh dear, I did call him. I told him I was in trouble. He gets so worried. You called your friend, Andre said, exasperated. Dad, we're handling this. You can't just call. God, he's probably some other old man from the post office. Just stay there. I'll get rid of him. The doorbell rang again. 2 sharp chimes. Ding dong, impatient. Andre marched to the front door and pulled it open. I was facing the hallway. I couldn't see the person on the porch, but I could see my son's reaction. He just froze. He didn't speak. He just stood there, his hand still on the doorknob. A deep, rich voice, smooth as polished granite, filled the house, a voice that commanded a room just by existing. Isaiah Thornton. Yes, Andre stammered, looking up. Move. It wasn't a request. It was an order. A man stepped past Andre, brushing his shoulder, moving him aside as if he were a piece of furniture. Andre just stood there, pushed aside, his mouth slightly open. The man who entered my living room was my age, 71, but he stood 6'3", ramrod straight. He was wearing a dark 3-piece pinstripe suit that I knew for a fact was handmade on Savile Row. He was black, his hair a perfect close-cropped silver. He held a thick alligator skin briefcase in one hand. His eyes, sharp and assessing, swept the room in a single dismissive glance. He took in the cozy furniture. He registered Brooke, who was standing in the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed. He ignored her completely. His gaze landed on me, still cowering in the armchair. Instantly, the hard corporate mask on his face melted into one of genuine warm concern. He walked right past Andre and Brooke. He knelt by my chair just as Andre had done an hour before, but there was no acting in it. This was real. Zay, he said, his voice now full of a deep, resonant warmth. He took my hand in both of his. I came as soon as I got your message. Are you all right? Did they touch you? Jules, I whispered, letting a tear, a real one this time, roll down my cheek. I'm so glad you're here. They're scaring me. They said they're putting me in a home. Jules's head snapped up. He looked at Andre and Brooke. The warmth was gone. His eyes were not just cold, they were arctic. What? He said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. Did you say to him, Brooke, who was used to being the most intimidating person in any room, found her footing? She stepped forward, trying to reclaim her dominance. I don't know who you are, she said, her voice dripping with disdain, but this is a private family matter. You need to leave. A family matter, Jules repeated, as if tasting a foul word. He stood up slowly, rising to his full, imposing height. He seemed to fill the small room. He looked down at Brooke, and for the first time I saw her actually take a step back. "This," Jules said, "stopped being a family matter the moment you decided to commit conspiracy to defraud. This is now a legal matter." "Conspiracy." Andre finally found his voice high and reedy. "Who are you?" "We're trying to help my father. He's not well. He just tore up a $2 million check." Jules actually smiled. It was not a kind expression. "He told you about the check?" Jules said, glancing at me with something like admiration. "Oh, Zay, you're better than I thought. You baited the trap perfectly." "What?" Andre said, his face a mask of confusion. "He tore it up because he's senile," Brooke shouted, her voice shrill. "He's incompetent. He just admitted it." "Incompetent," Jules said. He walked over to my desk, placed his alligator briefcase on the polished wood, and clicked the heavy brass latches. Snap. Snap. "That is a very specific, very dangerous legal term, young lady. A term that carries penalties for false filing. You'd better be able to back it up." He pulled out 3 thick-bound documents. "These," he said, dropping them on the table, thud, thud, "are full cognitive and psychiatric evaluations. From Dr. Mendez of UCLA, Dr. Singh of Cedars-Sinai, and Dr. Kaplan, the chief of geriatric psychology at Johns Hopkins, who was flown in privately 2 days ago." Andre's face went slack. "Flown in, all 3, Jules continued, "state under oath that Mr. Isaiah Thornton is not only perfectly competent, but possesses a financial and strategic mind in the 99th percentile for any age group. So I ask you again, what was that you were saying about him being unwell?" Brooke's face was white. "Dr. Kaplan flown in. Who are you? How could you—" Jules turned to Andre. He ignored Brooke. He focused on my son. "Andre," he said, "your father in his simple way, he forgot to introduce me." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a heavy, cream-colored business card. He didn't hand it to Andre. He flicked it. It spun through the air and landed perfectly on the coffee table in front of him. Andre stared at it. Brooke, trembling, snatched it up. She read it aloud, her voice a reedy, strangled whisper. "Julian Jules Griffin, Chairman and CEO, Griffin Thornton Logistics." She looked up, her eyes wide with a dawning, uncomprehending terror. "Griffin." "Gillian Thornton, as in GT Logistics, the defense contractor, the one that's worth $500 million, give or take a few million," Jules said, adjusting his cufflink. "I'm Griffin. He pointed at me, still sitting in the armchair. "Is Thornton. I'm the CEO. He is the majority owner and the chairman of the board, and my partner for 45 years. Brooke's hand went to her mouth. She looked at Andre. Andre just shook his head, a slow, disbelieving motion. He looked at me, at the man he thought he knew, the man in the old sweater, the man he'd just tried to have committed. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was broken. "Dad, what is he talking about? You're a postman. You worked at the post office." This was the moment. I sat up. I let the frail, trembling, confused old man melt away like a snake shedding its skin. I straightened my back in Lucille's chair. I looked my son in the eye. The fog was gone. My voice was no longer a whisper. It was the clear, cold, precise voice of the chairman. "That was my day job, son," I said. "It kept me honest. It kept me grounded. It reminded me what real work felt like in my hands." I stood up from the chair. I walked past him, past Brooke, and stood by the fireplace next to Lucille's photograph. "My real job, Andre. My real job, the one you never bothered to ask about, the one that paid for the college you attended, the car you drove, the $50,000 you gave to this woman so she could buy shoes." I turned to face them. They looked so small, so stunned, so utterly, hopelessly outmatched. "My real job," I said, "was building an empire that you just tried to steal from a confused old man." Andre stumbled back and sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "No," he was whispering over and over. No, this isn't. It can't be." Brooke, however, was already recovering. The shock was being replaced by her true nature. The viper was cornered and she was preparing to strike. "It's a lie," she shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Jules. "He's lying. This is a trick. You're trying to cheat us. You're conspiring against us." Jules laughed, a deep, genuine, booming laugh that startled her. "Cheat you, ma'am. You came into this house, a house we hold the title to defraud a man who is personally worth more than your entire bankrupt family tree. You are a minnow attempting to swallow a whale. The time for tricks is over. Now we talk about consequences." Jules picked up his briefcase, walked over to me, and handed me the alligator skin case. I set it on the mantel and opened it. Andre looked up, his face ashen. "Dad, please. I didn't know. I just thought you were sick." "That," I said, pulling out the first file, the Kroll report, "is the biggest lie of all. You did know. You knew I was your father. And that should have been enough." I threw the file onto the coffee table in front of him. It landed with a heavy final thud. "Now," I said, "let's talk about that $50,000 loan." Jules let out a long, slow breath. The sound was full of contempt. He looked at Brooke, who was still standing, her face a mask of white-hot rage and disbelief. "So," Jules said, his voice casual as if discussing the weather, "the petition for conservatorship is dead on arrival. Any lawyer who files it knowing these psychiatric evaluations exist would be facing disbarment. You will not touch Mr. Thornton's mind." He then picked up the first document I had signed, the deed transfer. "Now let's discuss the primary asset you were attempting to, as you said, manage, this house." Andre, who had been sitting like a stone on the sofa, finally looked up. His eyes were hollow. "My mother's house," he whispered. "No," Jules said, his voice sharp. "Not anymore. As of 9:04 a.m. yesterday morning, this property, 4115 View Park Drive, along with the land it sits on, was legally and irrevocably transferred." Brooke's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with animal panic. "Transferred to who you—" She was looking at Jules, thinking he had scammed me. She was looking for an angle, a way to turn this. "To me?" Jules actually laughed. "No, Ms. Davenport, not to me. Mr. Thornton is far too intelligent for that. He transferred it into the Maya Thornton Irrevocable Education Trust." The name hung in the air. Maya, my granddaughter. "This house," Jules continued, placing the document on the coffee table with a soft thud, "now belongs to Mr. Thornton's granddaughter. Its value will be used upon her majority for her education and her future. I am the trustee. Mr. Thornton," he nodded at me, "is the sole administrator. You, Andre Thornton, and you, Brooke Davenport, are explicitly barred from residing here. You are barred from using this property as collateral, and you are barred from receiving 1 single cent from its eventual sale. You have no claim. You have no rights. You have no standing." You gave it away," Andre stammered, his voice cracking. "You gave my inheritance to a child." I finally spoke. I hadn't moved from the fireplace. My voice was low, and it cut through the room like a cold wind. "I did not give it away, Andre. I secured it. I secured Lucille's legacy. I secured it from you." I looked at Brooke, whose face was collapsing in on itself. "You cannot sell my granddaughter's house to pay for your spa days, Brooke. You cannot leverage Lucille's memory to buy new luggage. You... Brooke was trembling, her hands clenched at her sides. "You bastard! You manipulative old bastard! You tricked us." "No," I said. "I believed you. I believed you when you told me who you were. And now, we move on to your finances." Jules did not miss a beat. He stepped forward again, the ringmaster of this execution. He turned his attention back to my son. "Andre, let's talk about the $50,000. The loan." Andre flinched. That was a family matter. That was... He gave me that. It was a gift. A gift for the wedding. A wedding he wasn't invited to, Jules asked, his voice silky. "A wedding you lied about. No, I don't think any court in the world would see that as a gift. Mr. Thornton recalls it as a loan you promised to repay when the fund cleared. A loan," Jules's voice dropped, "you swore on your mother's memory to return." I watched Andre flinch, the color draining from his face. He remembered. Good. Jules slid the second, thinner document onto the table. It was the promissory note. "This is a legal, formal demand for immediate repayment. $50,000 plus 8% compounded interest retroactive to the date the check was cashed by your wife. The total as of today is $53,478. It is due now. I can't, Andre whispered, his eyes darting to Brooke. I don't have it. You know I don't have it. Oh, we know, Jules said. We know exactly where it went. Kroll is very, very good. $18,450 to American Express. Your wife's card, not yours. $12,000 to Saks Fifth Avenue. $10,000 for 2 first-class tickets to Bora Bora. And $9,550 in cash from an ATM at the LAX International Terminal. Jules leaned in. We have the timestamps, Andre. You cashed your father's check and paid for your honeymoon in the same afternoon. Andre looked at Brooke, a new sick horror dawning on his face. You told me your parents paid for the flights. You told me the Saks card was a wedding gift. Brooke was trapped. She didn't even look at him. She just stared at Jules, her eyes full of hate. It doesn't matter, she spat. We're married. It's our debt. My parents will help us. My father will handle this. He'll write a check. This is nothing to him. Your father, Jules said as if savoring the words. Franklin Davenport, the private equity man. He opened the third thickest binder, the Kroll report. This, Jules said, is fascinating reading. Franklin Davenport filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 24 months ago. Total outstanding liabilities, $412,000. He lost the house in Greenwich. He lost the cars. The private fund you mentioned, Andre, it's a defunct LLC registered in Delaware. Its last known bank balance was negative $3,200. He let that sink in. Your in-laws are frauds, Andre. They are bankrupt. They are living on high-interest credit cards and fumes. They are con artists. That's a lie. Brooke lunged forward, trying to grab the report. My father is... Jules didn't even flinch. He simply moved the binder out of her reach. Your father is a broke, desperate man who saw your husband as the heir to a $1.8 million house. He saw your father-in-law as a senile, easy mark. You weren't merging families, Ms. Davenport. You were attempting a hostile, fraudulent takeover of a man's life, and you failed. Brooke stumbled back as if she'd been struck. She sank onto the ottoman, her hands covering her face. She wasn't making a sound. Andre, my son, just sat on the sofa. He was pale. He looked hollow. He looked at me, his eyes dead. Dad, he whispered, his voice broken. Why? Why did you do this all these years? You had everything. You were rich. You watched me. You let me. You could have helped. I looked at him, my son, still a child, still blaming me for his own choices. Helped, I said. My voice was cold. It came from the 72nd floor of my tower. I did help you, Andre. I gave you a college education free of debt. I gave you this home to grow up in. I gave you a good name. I gave you $50,000 in cash the very moment you asked for it. I paused, letting the words hang in the air, and I said, I was prepared to give you this. I reached into my pocket, the pocket of my old postman's sweater. I pulled out the small white envelope, the one with the confetti. I walked over to the coffee table and turned it upside down. The tiny, torn pieces of the $2 million check scattered across the Kroll report. Brooke's head snapped up, her eyes red and swollen, fixed on the pieces. The check, she whispered. It was real. It was real, I said. It was my gift to my son. It was his inheritance, Andre. It was his foundation. It was his freedom. It was the money he needed to stand on his own 2 feet, free from you, Brooke. Free from your fraudulent, bankrupt family. I looked at Andre. His face was a wreck of shame and agonizing regret. I was going to give it to you at the wedding, I said. But you didn't want a father at your wedding. You wanted a victim. You gave me the wrong date. You conspired with this stranger to have me declared insane, to steal my home, my mother's home. You did that. I pointed to the front door. Get out. Dad, please. Andre stood up, his legs shaking. Please, I have nowhere to go. We have no money. Brooke, that, I said, is no longer my concern. Get out of my granddaughter's house. He didn't move. He just stood there, broken. Brooke, however, stood up. Her face was no longer sad. It was just hard. She grabbed her expensive bag, walked to the door, opened it, and walked out without a single word. She didn't look back. Andre stood there for one moment longer. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I just looked back. My face was stone. He finally turned, his shoulders slumped, and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. I was alone, in Lucille's house. I sat down in the armchair. It was finally over. 4 months later. The warehouse floor at the GT Logistics Hub in Long Beach was chaos. Trucks beeping, forklifts moving, men yelling. I was in a hard hat and a safety vest walking the floor. Jules thought I was crazy, but I always liked to check on my operations. I saw him. He was at a loading dock with a digital scanner checking a manifest. He was thinner. He'd shaved his head. He was wearing the same safety vest as everyone else. He saw me, froze for a second, then immediately went back to scanning. I walked over. "Thornton," I said. He turned, startled. "Mr. Thornton, sir." He wouldn't call me Dad. Not here. "The manifest for the Singapore shipment," I said. "Is it correct?" "Yes, sir," he replied. "I triple-checked it. The container weights are balanced." "Good," I said. I turned to walk away. "Dad," he called out. I stopped. I turned back. He fumbled in his pocket. He pulled out a crumpled personal check. "It's from my first paycheck. It's $500. He held it out to me. "It's the first payment for the $50,000. I know it's not much. I know it'll take forever. But it's a start." I looked at the check. I looked at his hands. They were rough, calloused. For the first time in his life, he had calluses. I didn't take the check. Jules Griffin set up an education trust for Maya. You will deposit that check and every check after it into that account. You are not paying me back, Andre. You are paying her back. For the future, you tried to steal from her. He looked at the check in his hand, then back at me. His eyes were stinging. He nodded. "Yes, sir." "Brooke," I asked. She finalized the divorce last week," he said, his voice low. "She moved back east with her parents." I nodded once. "Good. Now get back to work. That shipment is late." Andre nodded again. "Yes, sir." He turned and went back to his scanner. I watched him for a moment. He was no longer an heir. He was no longer a con man's victim. For the first time in his life, he was just a man, working. I pulled out my own phone. My lock screen was a picture of Maya laughing, her head thrown back. The legacy was secure. I smiled. And I walked away. Here is a lesson we can all take from Isaiah's story. True worth is never defined by the car someone drives, the house they live in, or the clothes they wear. These are just appearances. Real value lies in character, integrity, and the respect we show one another, especially our family. Greed and manipulation built on a foundation of lies will always crumble and lead to ruin. This story is a powerful reminder that underestimating someone based on a false perception of weakness or poverty is a dangerous game. The quietest person in the room is often the most powerful, and their dignity is an inheritance that can never be stolen. What would you have done if you were in Isaiah's shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one.